Welcome to the verse-by-verse study of the Gospel of John. We begin chapter 12 today. In the first 11 chapters, John covered the first 3 years of Jesus' public ministry. Now in these last 10 chapters, John will focus on the last 8 days of Jesus' life, leading to his death and resurrection, which is called the Passion Week, the week that literally changed the world. But first, this chapter begins with a touching sidebar, an introduction to good versus evil that will unfold in this Passion Week. The author will make a comparison between a woman named Mary and a man named Judas. The setting is a celebration dinner in a small town less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. Verse 1 begins, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, actually returned to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Recall that Jesus, after raising Lazarus from the dead, the Jewish leaders had sent word to immediately arrest him. So Jesus had chosen to leave Judea, and now he is returning this last time. His time now has come. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him, with Jesus. So the author provides this beautiful picture of the 3 facets of the Christian life. A born-again Lazarus, restored to new life, resurrected, and Martha, his sister, in God's service. And as we shall see, we have Mary in worship, a disciple, sitting quietly, listening, learning at Jesus' feet. The author tells us, then Mary took a pint, which is 12 ounces in a Greek measurement, of pure nard, an oil, a very expensive and highly prized perfume from India. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with this fragrance, with the fragrance of this perfume. It was a Jewish custom for a wealthy host to provide water and a servant to wash his guests' feet before they came into the house before a meal. So here we have Mary becoming that servant. And rather than using water, out of devotion and love, she uses this highly expensive perfume. Verse 5 will tell us this perfume was worth a year's wages, or 300 pieces of silver, or denarii in a Roman coin, silver coin. It was not uncommon for someone to invest in this type of commodity, just like investing in precious metal like gold. This perfume was likely Mary's retirement savings account. But rather placing her faith in her 401k, she chooses to place her faith in the Messiah, which means the Anointed One. Mary, like many others, knew the Jewish leaders intended to put Jesus to death. And so in her mind, this could be the last time she would see her Messiah, who had just saved her brother's life. Her sister Martha had chosen to prepare and serve a beautiful home-cooked meal. And we get the word deacon from this word, to serve. Mary will choose a different path to honor Christ. Imagine the beautiful joy that these 2 sisters had brought to Jesus. He knew in a few days he'd be facing a horrible death. Jesus himself would later model Mary's action in the upper room when he humbly washes the feet of the disciples to teach them about service. Now the author will make a stark comparison between the choice, Mary's choice of unselfish love, and Judas's choice of selfish greed. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? In fact, in the other Gospels, he calls it a waste. It was worth a year's wages, that 300 silver coins. So what is his motivation? The author tells us he did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it. So we learn that Judas was the trusted treasurer, looked up by the other disciples, likely because he was not from the back country of Galilee, but he was a Judean from the more urban Judea, likely more educated, better speaker, smart, knew his numbers. But by saying that this action was a, quote, waste, he was demeaning Mary, this silly girl, and in some ways demeaning Jesus himself. Judas's motivation, he knew Jesus' days were numbered, and soon there'd be no more money to embezzle. So he reveals his true emotion. He sees this as a woman that had just wasted his opportunity to cash in on a final big payday. So Mary chooses to honor Christ with 300 pieces of silver, and Judas will dishonor Christ for only 30 pieces of silver. So, what is Jesus' response to Judas's comment? He immediately comes to her defense with a sharp command, speaking to all the disciples because the other Gospels tell us that many of them agreed with Judas. He says, "Leave her alone," Jesus replied. "It was intended," meaning it was God's will, that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. In fact, in Matthew, he adds, Jesus said to them, "She has done a beautiful thing to me." Jesus understood this was a blessing from Father God through Mary. His horrible death was heavy on his mind. And this meal and this blessing was a beautiful reminder of Father God's love. Jesus adds, "You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." Here Judas is further correcting Judas. He's saying that Mary's actions to the rest of the disciples was not about the poor. As long as there is sin of greed in this world, sadly there will be the poor among us. His powerful point to everyone, when I am gone, he's telling the disciples, you will have a decision to make, to either follow the example of Mary or follow the example of Judas. That's the message to all of us. We shall close there and begin next time with Jesus entering Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. Until then, may God bless you and bless your family with both his grace and his peace. Aloha.